3 days before my wedding with Ethan, my best friend, Chloe, sat crying on her couch, sobbing that she had fallen in love with someone she shouldn't have. That night, I stayed with her and drank until we were both wasted. Then, I called Ethan to come pick us up. Half an hour later, I heard those familiar footsteps stop right beside me. Ethan leaned down, gently pinching my cheek just like he used to do whenever I got drunk. "Hazel," he whispered. I bit back a smile and pretended to be asleep. I thought that once he realized I was faking, he'd let out a helpless sigh, scoop me up in his arms, and kiss me senseless as a punishment, just like he had done 1,000 times before. But the next second, he turned away from me and walked over to Chloe. "Chloe, why did you drink so much?" Chloe sleepily grabbed his sleeve. "Ethan." He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned down and cooed. "I'm right here." I lay there, frozen on the couch. Every drop of alcohol in my system evaporated instantly. At that exact moment, I realized something. I knew exactly who Chloe was in love with. Ethan carried Chloe to the front passenger seat first. His movements were practiced and natural. When he finally turned back to carry me, I slowly opened my eyes. "Ethan, why did you carry her first?" His steps paused. He looked down at me, his voice low and soothing. "She's much drunker than you. You can stretch out and lie down in the back seat. It's more comfortable." I nodded slowly. His logic made sense. But for some reason, my chest still ached. I looked down, pretending the alcohol was hitting me again, and weakly grabbed the hem of his jacket. "Ethan." He looked down at me. "Yeah. If you ever cheat on me, I'll ruin you." He let out a low chuckle, treating me like a drunk, unreasonable girl throwing a tantrum. "I could never. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." I didn't say anything. I just slowly closed my eyes. The bridge of my nose stung with unshed tears. As we went through an intersection, a pedestrian suddenly ran across the street. Ethan slammed on the brakes. My forehead hit the back of the front seat. The pain made my vision go black for a second. His first instinct, however, was to reach out his arm to shield Chloe. Only after Chloe was securely settled did he look up, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. I quickly shut my eyes. I didn't even dare to analyze whether he was worried about me or just trying to see if I was awake. Before I knew it, the car stopped in front of Chloe's apartment building. Ethan got out, bent down, and carried Chloe inside. I slowly pushed the car door open and followed them. The hallway was quiet, with only the echo of our footsteps. I kept a few paces behind them. Over and over, I kept telling myself in my head, "Maybe you're just overthinking." But the next second, Ethan pressed his thumb against the biometric lock. The door clicked open. I froze, staring in absolute disbelief. Chloe stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Their silhouettes tangled together as they stepped backward into the apartment. In that single moment, I realized some questions didn't need to be asked anymore. Through the half-open door, Ethan finally looked up. The moment he saw me standing there, it was as if he'd been slapped awake. He pushed Chloe away abruptly. "Chloe's drunk." I was just helping her upstairs. My gaze drifted to the biometric lock. I asked quietly, "Did you set up your fingerprint just to help her upstairs, too?" Ethan went silent for 2 long seconds before speaking in a low voice. "She needed help with wedding samples and client drafts before. I just helped her out a few times." Was kissing her also part of the job? Chloe's eyes were red as she spoke up. "Hazel, don't blame him. It was all me." "Chloe, since when is it your job to explain things for my fiancé?" Ethan immediately stepped forward, shielding Chloe behind his back. "Enough, Hazel. This has nothing to do with her." I looked at him calmly and nodded. "Right, it has nothing to do with her. I shouldn't have followed you up, I shouldn't have seen it, and I shouldn't have asked." A flash of panic crossed Ethan's eyes. "That's not what I meant." I shook my head. "I've spent the entire car ride making excuses for you. But I'm done lying to myself. We're over." With that, I turned around and walked away. Hurried footsteps echoed behind me. Ethan grabbed my wrist, his palm burning hot against my skin. "Hazel, stop talking out of anger, okay? We've been together for 8 years, not 8 days. The wedding dress is picked. The venue is booked. Our wedding is in 3 days. You were up until midnight yesterday editing our wedding video." My steps halted. That video was a collection of proposal clips he had secretly recorded in countless places. From our college campus to street corners, from snowy mountains to the beach. 8 years of our lives, pieced together second by my own hands. My eyes welled with tears. At that moment, I almost wanted to ask him, "Ethan, can you cut ties with Chloe right now?" But before I could speak, a soft whimper came from inside the apartment. "Ethan?" The next second, his grip on my wrist loosened. "Her stomach is acting up. I need to go check on her." He took 2 steps back inside, then paused, looking at me as if fearing I would actually disappear. Hazel, wait for me downstairs. Wait till I get back and we'll talk. I looked at him and slowly pulled my hand away. Okay. Ethan visibly relaxed and turned back into the apartment. I stood there, pulling out my phone to open the WhatsApp wedding planning group. I suddenly remembered when Ethan first started out as an independent wedding planner. He had worked through the night, revising the itinerary over and over again. I had asked him, "It's just one wedding. Why are you working so hard?" He had looked down and smiled. Because every bride is trusting us with a once-in-a-lifetime dream. A wedding planner's most important job is to never let the bride down. Later, for our own wedding, he spent over 3 months tweaking the design. Chloe had also volunteered to be our wedding coordinator. I stared at the chat box and finally sent out a single message. The wedding is canceled. In the back of the Uber, my phone buzzed continuously. This time it was Chloe. I picked up. Hazel, please don't be reckless, okay? Soon. The voice on the other end changed to Ethan's. I was wrong tonight, but you can't throw away everyone's hard work just because you're mad at me. I stared out the window and said softly, Ethan, do you remember what you told me when you planned your first wedding? Well, you've completely let your bride down. With that, I hung up. My fingers clenched tightly around my phone. I couldn't understand. Why did it have to be them? The 2 people closest to me had personally destroyed the future I had looked forward to for so long. I lowered my head, finally breaking down into tears. I didn't go back to our shared apartment. All the wedding decorations were still there, along with everything we had prepared. But after tonight, I never wanted to step foot in that place again. By the time I made it to my flower studio, the sky was already turning gray. The next morning, Ethan's call woke me up. Hazel, Chloe lost the bridal bouquet you dropped off yesterday while she was doing inventory. Can you put together a replacement? I'll come pick it up. I held the phone, not answering immediately. If this had happened yesterday, I would have panicked. But now, I felt entirely numb. The contract was still active, and the final payment hadn't been settled yet. Okay, I replied. I opened the walk-in cooler. Since my own wedding was supposed to be tomorrow, I hadn't ordered any new inventory. The only flowers left inside were the ones I had saved for myself. Ethan had helped me pick them out, stem by stem. I pulled them out, trimming the stems, removing the thorns, and wrapping them with ribbon. With every cut of the shears, it felt like I was snipping away a piece of our past. Just as the bouquet was nearly finished, the doorbell rang. Ethan had arrived, with Chloe trailing right behind him. When Ethan saw the flowers on the table, his face fell. Hazel, aren't these? He didn't finish his sentence. I bent my head to tie the final ribbon. Yeah, they were meant for my wedding tomorrow. Ethan frowned. I handed the completed bouquet to him. I don't have anything else. After a pause, I smiled faintly. No more flowers and no more wedding. Just as he was about to speak, Chloe tugged at his sleeve. Ethan, we're going to be late. Ultimately, he took the bouquet. Hazel, wait for me to get back. After watching them walk away, I opened my email on my phone. At the very top of my inbox was an admission letter from a prestigious floral design school in Paris, received 3 days ago. Honestly, I had waited for this opportunity for a long time. But Ethan had told me that once we were married, I shouldn't go running off to other countries. I tapped the confirmation link again and booked a one-way ticket leaving tonight. I began canceling everything related to the wedding. With every vendor chat I closed, it felt like I was tearing out a piece of my own soul from the last 8 years. In the end, only the venue setup remained, which I didn't have the authorization to cancel. By the time I arrived at the hotel to find Ethan, the bride's reception was already underway. On stage, the bride held my bouquet, her face glowing with happiness. The bride choked up as she spoke into the mic. The person I want to thank the most today is Chloe. My original bouquet was lost by the florist, but Chloe put this one together at the last minute, so I wouldn't have any regrets. Ethan spotted me in the banquet hall almost immediately. He walked over quickly, blocking my path. This is the first wedding Chloe is coordinating on her own.
She worked so hard on this.
Don't make a scene now. I hadn't said a single word. Yet in his eyes, my mere presence made me the villain who was there to ruin Chloe's moment. I pulled out the floral delivery receipt from my bag. Chloe's signature was clearly written on it. Chloe's face turned pale, and she immediately reached out to grab it. Hazel, can we talk about this after the wedding, please? I know you're mad at me, but today is about the client. Hearing the commotion, the bride's mother walked over. Is there a problem here? Chloe lowered her head, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, this is my fault. The bride was under a lot of stress, and there was an issue with the original bouquet. I just made a quick replacement. With that one sentence, all eyes fell on me. I looked up at Ethan, but he only gently pressed down on my wrist. Let's just get through the wedding first. I suddenly remembered how, in the past, whenever something went wrong, Ethan would always stand by my side without hesitation. Back then, even without proof, he believed me. Now, knowing the truth, he was telling me to back down. The bride's mother looked at me cold-eyed. Miss Brooks, today is my daughter's wedding. Whatever business issues you have, they shouldn't be brought here. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I had already lost my own wedding. I didn't want to ruin another bride's day. Numbly, I sat down on a sofa outside the banquet hall. Through the half-open door, I saw Chloe's manager scolding her with a dark expression. You were in charge of inventory. You lost the bouquet, and then had the client thank you publicly? Chloe kept her head down, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stood beside her, making excuses on her behalf. Once the manager left, the hallway fell quiet again. Ethan turned and walked toward me. Are you happy now, Hazel? Chloe worked herself to the bone for this. Did you really have to destroy all her hard work? I suddenly burst out laughing. Ethan, is Chloe really that important to you? So important that you can't even tell right from wrong anymore? Ethan seemed to finally register what he had said. His expression stiffened, and he took a step closer to me. That's not what I meant. Things were just too chaotic. I was stressed, and I took it out on you. He was always like this during our past arguments. He'd make me cry first, then soften his voice to comfort me. And as long as he apologized, I would always cave. Ethan, for work matters, contact my assistant. As for our personal life, we're done. Ethan let out a bitter, frustrated laugh. Have you had enough of this tantrum? Chloe also spoke up, her eyes red. Hazel, this joke is going a bit too far. Before the words could fully leave her mouth, a sudden commotion broke out inside the banquet hall. The groom stormed out, his face incredibly dark. The next second, he threw the bouquet violently on the floor, right in front of us. Didn't we explicitly tell you guys that the bride is highly allergic to gardenias? I instinctively looked down. Among the scattered white roses on the floor, there was a single gardenia stem. Chloe froze, her face instantly losing all color. Tears fell from her eyes right on cue. Hazel, I know you hate me, but the client is innocent. Ethan frowned, turning his gaze to me. Hazel, I never thought you could be this malicious. I curled my lips into a bitter smile, staring straight back at him. Me neither. Ethan startled, clearly not expecting that response. He knit his brows, lowering his voice. Hazel, now is not the time to be stubborn. Apologize to the client first. Chloe chimed in softly, her eyes red. Hazel, the bride is resting in the bridal suite. Just go apologize. She made it sound like she was trying to help me, but every word she spoke was framing me for the crime. The groom was completely furious now, pointing a finger at us as he yelled, Is this how you run a business? You're quick to take credit, but when something goes wrong, you just point fingers? Their family members quickly surrounded us, pushing and shoving, demanding an explanation. Chloe gasped, stumbling backward. Almost at the same time, someone shoved my shoulder hard. My foot slipped, and I fell onto the floor. As Ethan rushed over, I still looked up. In that split second, my body reacted faster than my brain. 8 years of habit made me believe he would check on me first, but the next second, he brushed right past me. He pulled Chloe into his arms, shielding her. Stop pushing. Just then, the paramedics arrived. The bride was wheeled out. Chloe held her wrist, her eyes brimming with tears. Ethan immediately supported her. Chloe, I'll take you to the hospital. I pushed myself up from the floor, blood trickling down my leg from my scraped knee. A hotel staff member nearby handed me some napkins. Miss Brooks, you should tend to your leg. I looked at Ethan. He was busy adjusting Chloe's coat, never once looking back. In the emergency room hallway, Chloe sat next to Ethan while he softly comforted her. I sat on the opposite bench, letting the nurse clean the scrapes on my knee. The alcohol stung, making my fingers tremble. It wasn't until the nurse called out my name to sign the paperwork that Ethan seemed to remember I was there. Hazel. He walked over, his brows furrowing when he saw my bloody knee. How did you get hurt like this? I didn't answer. Hazel, tonight was too chaotic. Don't overthink things. Go home and rest. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning to head to the venue. I looked at him and slowly pulled my leg back. Okay. He turned and walked away. And I walked in the opposite direction. By the time my flight landed in Paris and I turned my phone back on, a flood of notifications rushed in. The air in Charles de Gaulle Airport was damp and smelled subtly of jet fuel and
rain.
Hazel pushed her luggage trolley past the sliding glass doors into the chilly morning gray of Paris. She pulled out her phone, turned off airplane mode, and waited. For 3 seconds, the screen remained dark. Then, the floodgates opened. Over 80 missed calls, 142 text messages, dozens of voicemails piling up like dry leaves against a closed door. Most were from Ethan. A few were from Chloe. A handful were from mutual friends and vendors from the wedding group chat. Hazel didn't open the messages. She simply swiped the notifications away, replaced her local SIM card with a new French one she bought at the terminal kiosk, and dragged her bags toward the taxi line. Back in the city she had left behind, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. Ethan stood outside the glass doors of Hazel's flower studio, holding a cup of her favorite lavender latte and a paper bag containing warm cinnamon rolls from the bakery down the street. He tapped on the glass. "Hazel, you awake?" No answer. He frowned, checking his watch. The venue setup at the Grand Hotel was scheduled for 9. The ceremony, their wedding, was supposed to take place tomorrow at sunset. "Hazel, come on," he muttered, pulling out his key. "We need to leave in 20 minutes. If you're still mad, we can talk in the car." He unlocked the door. The familiar brass bell above the entryway jingled merrily. "Hazel." The studio was empty. Not just temporarily quiet, empty. The walk-in cooler, which usually hummed with the sound of cold air keeping rows of imported blooms fresh, was dark and turned off. The stainless steel work tables were scrubbed clean. The sheer racks were bare. Her prized Japanese floral shears, the ones he had bought her for her 24th birthday, were
Gone.
on the central counter sat a single white envelope addressed to him in her neat, precise handwriting. Ethan's heart gave a strange, violent thud against his ribs. The coffee cup in his hand suddenly felt uncomfortably hot. He stepped forward, his shoes echoing in the hollow room, and picked up the envelope. Inside was a set of keys, the studio keys, the keys to his apartment, and the key to the small storage unit they rented together, along with a neatly printed letter from her attorney. It was a formal notice of business separation, along with a relinquishment of her shares in their joint event firm, signed and notarized. Pinned to the back was a heavy silver band, his grandmother's engagement ring. Ethan stared at the ring. His fingers began to tremble. "No," he whispered, a nervous, involuntary laugh escaping his lips.
No, she's
Throwing another tantrum. She's at her apartment." He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. "The number you've dialed is no longer in service." He dialed again. Same automated recording. Panic, cold and sharp as an icicle, pierced his chest. He turned around and sprinted out of the studio, ignoring the coffee cup he knocked off the counter, letting it shatter against the polished concrete floor. 20 minutes later, Ethan burst into his own apartment, the apartment they had spent 6 months renovating together, choosing every shade of paint, every curtains track, every rug. Hazel. Silence met him. He ran to the master bedroom. The closet door hung wide open. Her side was completely bare. Her shoes, her coats, her dresses, her luggage, all
gone.
The vanity table was stripped clean of her creams and perfumes. The only thing left on the mirror was a small blue sticky note. "The wedding dress was returned to the boutique yesterday. You can pick up the refund deposit." Ethan fell back against the bed frame, his chest heaving as if he had just run a marathon. His phone began to ring incessantly in his palm. He snatched it up, expecting her voice. "Hazel." "Ethan, where the hell are you?" It was his senior project director, his voice frantic. "The guests' families are calling. The hotel manager is asking why the main arch design isn't set up. And the client from yesterday's gardenia disaster. Her lawyer just called the office. They're threatening a massive lawsuit for negligence and breach of contract. Cancel." Ethan croaked, his throat feeling like sandpaper. "What?" "Cancel the setup," Ethan rasped, his eyes fixed on the empty closet. "Cancel everything." "Ethan, what are you talking about? Your wedding is tomorrow. The guests are flying in today." "There is no wedding." Ethan roared into the receiver, his voice cracking violently. He slammed the phone onto the floor, watching the glass screen spiderweb into a dozen sharp fractures. He collapsed onto his knees amidst the quiet, fragrant air of the apartment that still carried the faint trace of her rose-scented perfume, realizing for the very first time that the floor beneath him had completely given way. 2 weeks passed in Paris like a quiet, gray blur. Hazel rented a small, top-floor studio apartment in the 10th arrondissement, overlooking a quiet courtyard shaded by plane trees. Every morning at 7, she walked 6 blocks to the Floral Academy, where she spent 10 hours a day. elbow deep in cold water, learning the structural art of French classical arrangement, stem balance, and architectural installations. She stripped her life down to the essentials. No social media. No old contacts. She changed her phone number to a French carrier and spoke only to her landlord, her instructors, and a quiet bakery owner downstairs who sold her fresh baguettes every evening. Her hands, once kept soft for wedding photographs, grew calloused from handling wire, thorn strippers, and heavy timber frames. But when she looked at her hands in the mirror, she felt an unfamiliar sense of grounding. They were her hands again, not hands preparing to hold a bouquet for a man who looked over her shoulder at someone else. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Hazel sat in a small cafe near the canal, St. Martin, sketching a design for an upcoming installation assessment. Her laptop was open, logged into a brand new professional email account she had created for her studies. She opened her spam folder to clear out routine updates when a title caught her. An email from her old assistant, Maya, sent 3 days ago. Subject: Hazel, please read this. Hazel hesitated, her coffee spoon hovering over her cup. She took a slow breath, then clicked the link. Hazel, the email read. I know you asked me not to contact you, and I promise I won't bother you again after this. But you need to know what's happening here. Ethan is losing his mind. The day you left, he canceled the wedding. He told everyone you had an emergency, but the truth came out within 48 hours. Chloe tried to take over the firm's floral division to prove she could do your job, but she ruined 3 high-profile contracts in a single week. The bride from the Gardenia incident filed a formal complaint with the consumer board and posted the security footage online. Maya had attached a link to a local news blog. Hazel tapped the link. A video played. It was the high-definition hallway footage from the hotel where the wedding had taken place 2 weeks ago. The footage clearly showed Chloe slipping into the holding room where Hazel's bouquet had been kept. It showed Chloe picking through the roses, pulling out several stems, and inserting fresh white stems from her own bag, stems she had picked up from a local market earlier that morning. Chloe hadn't just accidentally lost the original bouquet, she had deliberately altered the replacement to sabotage Hazel, entirely ignorant of or indifferent to the client's severe medical allergy. The video continued, showing the moment Ethan defended Chloe in the hallway, while Hazel stood bruised on the floor. The comment section under the video was brutal. Ethan's planning firm had been publicly boycotted. Clients were pulling out of contracts left and right. His 8-year reputation as the city's premier wedding planner was in absolute tatters. Maya's text continued below. Chloe got fired from the agency yesterday. She tried to go to Ethan's apartment, but Ethan wouldn't let her in. I heard from the office staff that Ethan found the original bouquet, the one Chloe claimed was lost, hidden behind the storage shelves in Chloe's workspace. She had kept it there so you wouldn't have your own flowers for your wedding. Ethan hasn't come to the office in 5 days. He just sits in your empty studio down the street. Hazel, he looks like a ghost. He keeps asking everyone if anyone knows where you went. Hazel read the email twice. She expected to feel a surge of vindication. She expected to feel a sharp, bitter thrill at their ruin. Instead, as she looked out at the rain streaking down the tall French windows of the cafe, she felt nothing. Just a vast, calm emptiness. Like looking at a news report about a storm in a country she had visited a long time ago. She closed the email, selected it, and clicked permanently delete. Then, she shut her laptop, picked up her pencil, and went back to sketching her flowers. 4 months later, winter had settled over the city. A freezing drizzle blanketed the streets, turning the pavement slick and dark. Ethan sat on the floor of the empty flower studio, surrounded by unopened mail, legal notices, and half-empty liquor bottles. The studio was cold. The heating had been shut off 2 weeks ago due to unpaid bills. But he didn't care. He sat on the bench where Hazel used to sit every morning, wrapping ribbons around her floral stems. The door pushed open, letting in a gust of icy wind and the sound of traffic. Ethan didn't look up. We're closed.
Ethan.
It was Chloe. She looked nothing like the polished, bubbly girl who used to hover around his office. Her hair was limp, her eyes sunken and dark, her jacket stained at the hem. Ever since the video went viral, her reputation in the wedding industry was obliterated. No agency would hire her. Even her personal social media accounts had been deleted under a torrent of public harassment. She walked in, her heels clicking loudly against the concrete floor, and dropped a thick folder onto the counter. The settlement papers came from the groom's legal team, Chloe said, her voice raspy. They're offering to settle out of court if we pay $70,000 in damages. Ethan gave a hollow laugh, his eyes fixed on the blank wall opposite him. We? There is no we, Chloe. The business is bankrupt. Ethan, you have to help me. Chloe cried, her voice rising to a frantic, hysterical edge. She reached out to grab his shoulder. I did it for us.
I did.
Everything for us. Ethan slowly turned his head to look at her. His eyes were bloodshot, his face thin and unshaven, devoid of the warm, composed charm that had once defined him. For us? He whispered softly. You hid her wedding bouquet behind a shelf. You put gardenias into a client's arrangement because you knew Hazel's name was on the delivery slip. You kissed me in front of her door. You kissed me back, Chloe screamed, tears spilling down her pale cheeks.
You
held me. You carried me first. You cared about me more than you cared about her. Every single time I cried. Don't put this all on me, Ethan. You chose me every single day until she actually left. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow, stripping the air right out of his lungs. He stared at her, the terrible, unyielding truth of her words echoing through his skull. You chose me every single day until she actually left. She was right. Chloe hadn't forced him. She hadn't put a gun to his head. He had enjoyed the ego stroke of Chloe's dependence. He had liked feeling like the hero who saved the soft, vulnerable girl, taking Hazel's quiet, steadfast strength for granted. He had convinced himself that because Hazel was strong, because Hazel was mature, she could handle being put second. He had traded 8 years of quiet, devoted, unshakable love for the petty satisfaction of being needed by a liar. Get out, Ethan said quietly. Ethan. Get out of the studio, Ethan said, his voice dropping into a register so dark and cold that Chloe stepped back involuntarily. If I ever see your face again, I will release every email and draft you stole from Hazel's account to the
press. Get out.
Chloe trembled, her mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. Finally, seeing the total lack of warmth or mercy in his eyes, she backed away, turned, and ran out into the freezing rain. Ethan sat alone in the silence. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone, a new one bought after. He smashed his old one. He opened an old cloud folder. It was the wedding video Hazel had spent nights editing. Hundreds of clips, spanning 8 years. Hazel smiling under a snowy pine tree in Maine. Hazel sleeping in the passenger seat of his first battered car. Hazel laughingly holding up a burnt batch of cookies. Hazel looking at him with eyes so full of trust, so entirely devoid of doubt that it physically pained him to look at the screen. He remembered what she had said to him that night in the car, right before everything shattered. If you ever cheat on me, I'll ruin you. He had laughed back then. He had thought it was a drunk joke. He realized now that she hadn't ruined him at all. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't destroyed his office or dragged his name through the mud. She had simply taken her love, her light, and her presence and walked away. And in doing so, she had left him alone in the ruins of a life he had dismantled with his own hands. 18 months later,
Paris.
Spring had arrived in full force. The city was bathed in pale golden sunlight, and the chestnut trees along the Seine were bursting into brilliant green buds. At the Grand Palais, the annual International Floral Architecture Expo, the most prestigious event in the global floral design industry, was holding its opening night gala. The main hall was breathtaking. Towering archways of fresh blooms, suspended botanical installations, and living sculptures framed the soaring glass ceiling. Hundreds of high-profile designers, critics, buyers, and international press circulated through the venue, drinking champagne amidst the heavy scent of jasmine and rain-soaked moss. Ethan stood near the entrance, holding a visitor's pass. It had taken him over a year to track her down. A year of liquidating his failed agency, settling lawsuits, paying off debts, and working freelance consulting jobs just to survive. A year of chasing every faint rumor of her whereabouts, until a trade magazine article finally published her name. Hazel Brooks, winner of the European Botanical Gold Medal, lead designer for the
Grand Palais Exhibition.
He wore his best suit, the one he had bought for their wedding. It was loose on his thin frame now, but he had spent hours pressing it, picking out a silk tie, making sure he looked respectable. He pushed his way through the crowd, his heart hammering wildly against his
ribs.
And then he saw her. She was standing beneath a massive, 15-foot installation of white wisteria. and silver-threaded wire that seemed to float in the air like a suspended cloud. She wore an elegant, backless dark emerald silk gown. Her dark hair was swept up, exposing the delicate line of her neck. She held a glass of champagne, laughing warmly as she conversed in fluent French with a group of elderly judges and an elegant Italian gallery owner. She was radiant. There was no trace of the exhausted, stressed girl who used to stay up until 2 a.m. editing his wedding videos. There was no anxiety in her posture, no quiet caution in her smile. She looked powerful, self-assured, and utterly breathtaking. Ethan felt tears spring to his eyes. "Hazel," he whispered. He stepped forward, pushing past a group of photographers. "Hazel." Hazel paused mid-sentence. She turned her head calmly toward the sound of her
Name.
Their eyes met across the crowded floor. For a second, the bustling noise of the Grand Palais seemed to fade into a quiet hum. Ethan took 3 fast steps toward her, his voice trembling with a terrifying mixture of hope and agony. "Hazel, it's me. It's Ethan." The Italian gallery owner next to Hazel looked at Ethan with mild surprise, but Hazel merely placed a reassuring hand on her colleague's sleeve. "Excuse me for a moment," she said softly in English. She walked toward Ethan, stopping 3 paces away. She didn't look angry. She didn't look flustered. She looked at him the same way one might look at an unexpected stain on a table runner, with mild, detached
Curiosity.
"Ethan," she said quietly, "what are you doing here?" "Hazel." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He looked at her face, searching desperately for any sign of the woman who used to hold his hand in the dark. I bought a ticket. I've been looking for you for a year. Hazel, please."
You have to hear me out.
"This is a professional exhibition, Ethan," Hazel said, her tone level and unhurried. "If you're here as a guest, please enjoy the displays." "I don't care about the displays," Ethan choked out, stepping closer. "I came for you. I cleared everything up, Hazel."
Chloe is gone.
"She's completely out of my life. I closed the agency. I sold the apartment. I have nothing left, Hazel. Nothing except the memory of what I lost." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it with trembling hands. Inside sat the silver engagement ring. "I still have it," Ethan whispered, tears finally slipping down his face, ignoring the curious glances of passing guests. "I haven't slept a full night since the day you left. Every time I close my eyes, I see you standing in that
Hallway.
I know I broke your heart. I know I was a fool, a blind, selfish idiot. But please, 8 years, Hazel. We built 8 years together. Give me one chance to earn you back. Just one." Hazel looked down at the velvet box. She remembered the night he had given it to her on a snowy beach in Maine, his hands shaking just as they were now, promising her a lifetime of devotion. She remembered how much she had loved him, how much of herself she had sacrificed to build his dreams, to support his business, to forgive his small, micro-neglects until they became a mountain that crushed her. And then, she looked up into his eyes. There was no hatred in her heart, no burning desire for revenge. The pain that had once felt like a knife in her chest during that cold car ride home was entirely gone, replaced by a smooth, unshakable peace. "Ethan," she said, her voice clear and light as glass. "Yeah." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes shining with a desperate, pathetic flash of hope. "Do you know why I didn't cry when I left you?" she asked softly. Ethan blinked, confused.
What?
"I cried on the plane," Hazel said, adjusting the gold bracelet on her wrist.
I
"Cried for the 8 years I gave to a man who didn't respect me. I cried for the girl who spent her nights editing videos for someone who couldn't even keep his eyes on her in a car." She took a half step closer, looking straight into his broken face. "By the time I landed in Paris, I was done crying. I realized something very important." What did you realize?" Ethan's voice was barely a breath. "I didn't lose 8 years, Ethan," Hazel said, smiling faintly. "I just bought my freedom. And you showed me exactly who you were before I signed a piece of paper that tied me to you forever." She reached out, gently closing the lid of the velvet box in his hand with her fingers. "Keep the ring.
Sell it.
Use the money to rebuild your life. But do not ever come looking for me again." "Hazel, please." Ethan dropped to one knee, reaching frantically for her hand, totally oblivious to the gallery of people watching. "Please don't leave me like this. I love you. I've always loved you." Hazel took a graceful step backward, smoothly stepping out of his reach. You didn't love me, Ethan, she said, looking down at him with genuine pity. You just loved having someone who would always forgive you. She turned away from him without waiting for an answer. Hazel. A security guard, noticing the scene, stepped forward, placing a firm, polite hand on Ethan's shoulder. Monsieur, please stand up.
You are causing a
disturbance. Ethan didn't hear the guard. He remained on his knees on the polished marble floor of the Grand Palais, holding the cold velvet box, watching Hazel walk back toward the center of the
room.
She rejoined her colleagues beneath the floating canopy of white blossoms. Someone handed her a fresh glass of champagne. A photographer flashed a light, capturing her smile. She didn't look back once. 6 months later, the early morning sun streamed through the wide glass roof of Hazel's new flagship atelier in the heart of Paris's Marais district. Outside, the quiet cobblestone street was beginning to wake up.
The smell of
fresh espresso and buttered croissants wafted from the corner bistro. Inside, the studio was filled with thousands of fresh blooms, peonies garden, roses, ranunculus, and wild ivy, delivered straight from the markets in Holland. Hazel, the contract for the summer solstice gala at Versailles just came through. Her senior coordinator, a sharp Frenchwoman named Elise, called out from the office desk. They're asking if you can personally lead the installation team. Tell them I'd be delighted, Hazel said, snipping the bottom stem of a pale pink peony and placing it into a tall crystal vase. Her phone chimed on the counter. It was an automated news alert from her old hometown's business registry, an alert she had forgotten to cancel months ago. Hazel glanced at the screen. Notice of final liquidation, Ethan.My's event design and planning. Below, it was a short legal notice regarding the complete asset sale of the firm to cover outstanding debt judgments. Hazel read it once, her expression calm and unbothered. She swiped the notification off her screen and permanently deleted the alert preference. The brass bell above the front door jingled softly. Hazel looked up. A young man stepped into the studio, carrying a large wooden crate filled with rare, deep violet climbing roses she had ordered from an organic nursery in Provence. He pulled off his leatherwork gloves, wiped his brow, and gave her a warm, genuine smile. Good morning, Hazel, he said, his English accented with a soft southern French
drawl.
The grower sent an extra bundle, said they were the best batch of the season, and thought you'd know what to do with them. Hazel walked over, leaning down to smell the roses. Their scent was rich, deep, and intoxicatingly fresh. They're beautiful, Julian, she said, looking up at him with a warm smile. Thank you. Are you ready for the workshop this afternoon? Julian asked, leaning against the counter, his dark eyes fixed on her face with quiet admiration.
The
students are already lining up outside. Hazel looked around her studio, at the towering flower racks, the bright sunlight filling every corner, the passionate team working beside her, and the bright, open horizons stretching out before her. She picked up her shears, the steel glinting in the morning light, and set to
work.
I'm ready, she said softly. I've never been more ready.